So this video, and I'll try and keep it fairly short, is just to give you a run through of the environment that I work in, to show you what I'm using, how I did it, and how I run the scripts. And so you get some idea of how useful it can be using something like PowerShell Toolkit. So to start off with, I'm just going to explain Total Commander in the easiest way I can think of possible. If I open up two File Explorer windows, because I'm sure this is familiar to everybody, and if I paste the path to my scripts into each one, so it looks like that. So you can see I'm looking inside this Studio PowerShell Toolkit folder, and I've got all the folders that I've been working with in here. And on this side, this one over here, I've got the same thing. This essentially is exactly the same as this, except this is just an application called Total Commander that just makes it easy because I've got built-in capabilities to work on one side or the other, and I also have the possibility to have quick shortcuts for copying files, zipping files, doing all sorts of cool stuff. So don't be confused when you see Total Commander. It's nothing to do with Studio, nothing special. It's just a tool that you can download if you want to. There's also a tool called Free Commander, I think, which you can also use, which is very similar, does the same kind of thing, where you've got two locations, one side or the other. You can do cool things, like if I wanted to look at all my scripts, I can select the one on the left. Oops, hang on a minute. Select the one that. Oh, God. Sorry, I'm not working with my mouse because I've only got one USB capability on my own laptop here, because it's all the tiny little ones, and my plugins all use the old-fashioned USBs. So if I select the scripts on that side and I press Control right, what we see now on the right-hand side is everything that's inside the scripts folder. So it just has lots of cool things like that. So I'm going to close these Windows Explorer files, and I'm not going to use them again, but I just wanted to give you some idea so you don't get confused. This is what Total Commander is, because oftentimes this application in itself seems to confuse people. So I'm in the Studio PowerShell Toolkit folder, and in there you can see that I've got, if I look on the left hand side here, I've got my modules. So if I click on one and I look at it on the right hand side, these are all the modules that you will have downloaded from the PowerShell Toolkit. They're all as they are, except I obviously will have made some changes, putting in the right paths and things like that where it was important to do so, and you really need to inspect the scripts yourselves to see that. I've created a folder called Project Source Files, and in here I've just added two little text files, and I'm going to use those when I demonstrate the scripts in a second. That's what that's there for. My scripts folder is where I keep all my scripts, and in there I've got my scripts. I've got a couple of other little odds and sods. I've got a debugging folder where I keep it for putting in scripts when I'm working on them or trying to fix them when it doesn't work. I use that folder so I don't get them messed up. And when I finally fixed it, then I move it into the real one. I've got an images folder for where I've used images and things, and a miscellaneous folder for miscellaneous files. What did I have in there? An unblock script. So there you go. I think I mentioned that one. That just is a script that runs through and unblocks all the files when you download them. But you can find that on my GitHub site. So that's the environment I'm going to be working with. The other thing I just want to show you quickly is Visual Studio Code. This is a free application that you can download from the internet. It's called Visual Studio Code, and I use it because you can see I'm in the same location here. I opened the folder and I can see all the files, and if I just click them once, you can see it opens up the files I'm working on. They're nicely colored, it's clear, it makes it easy for me to be able to read it. It has lots of cool functions, like for example, if I wanted to, if I was debugging or I was doing something and I didn't want it to run that bit of code, for example, I can just quickly go Control / and it comments it out, so which means that when I run that file, it won't actually run that particular bit of code. So it's got really neat functions, plus the fact it's also got IntelliSense, so it recognizes a lot of the PowerShell stuff, because I also installed a PowerShell extension. I've got a few extensions here. AutoHotkey, you'll see you can get extensions for AutoHotkey, also for PowerShell. So it's really handy for doing any sort of development work or script work, because the syntax that you need to use is there and available to you as you're typing and working, and as you become more familiar with it, it can pop up in front of you while you're working, so it makes life much easier. So that's all I'm going to tell you about that. So I just use this application for that. The next thing I just wanted to show you quickly is that I mentioned in the blog article that I created a bit of a script at the beginning that just basically initializes PowerShell. So it imports all the modules, it sets up my development environment, and I'm ready to be able to run a simple script that uses the commands that are available to me under the Studio PowerShell Toolkit. And the first 50 lines, in fact 44 lines in this case, do nothing but that. All these lines here do, is just get me started. And this first script, get help Studio PS1, doesn't really do anything and I don't really need it, but I kept it because once I've imported all those things and I've got myself ready to go, I'll have a PowerShell window ready and then I can use the get help functions. So I'm going to show you how those work as well. And the other thing that I'm doing is, if I look at my little taskbar down here, you'll see that this little icon down here is actually an AutoHotkey script. If I right click that and I edit the script, this is the script that I'm using to run my PowerShell. So I have that running all the time, so that when I press and Control-Shift-R, which is what that little hotkey is there, then it will allow me to select any PowerShell script I like, and if that PowerShell script happens to be sitting within the Studio PowerShell Toolkit directory or folder, then it will run the 32-bit version of PowerShell, this line down here. If it's a script from anywhere else, it will use 64-bit mode and it will use the PowerShell 7. So that's all that script does. It's really short, really simple, but it's very handy and I find it very useful. So I'm going to show you how that works now. So with that, I'll try and be as quick as possible and just show you how I run the actual scripts. So I'm going to come back over to Total Commander and I'm going to run this first one, Get Help Studio. So I press Control-Shift-R. This opens up the folder with my scripts. I double click the script, it runs it. It opens up Windows PowerShell. This is the 32-bit version. It's loading them all, which is now done. And now I can use get help functions. So if I was to type get help and then whatever function I wanted help on, like for example, export TMX for example. When I do that, let me make this a little bit bigger. Now you can see I'm getting all the help information that's available in the help file for this particular function. So I can see the syntax that's available to me. I can also see a quick description of it. If I want to see some examples, I can add these extensions. So if I press the up arrow key now on the command line, which is down here, it will repeat what I just did before, get help export TMX. And now if I add minus examples, now I get some examples and you can see the examples down here. You'll notice that actually when I did this, I showed some screenshots in my blog that were coloured and the text was all coloured. That's because if I was running the 64-bit version of PowerShell, it would be coloured. It's totally different, but the 32-bit version is all bland and it's just black and white, I'm afraid. Yeah, so that's how that works. So there's my examples. It shows you how to export to TMX, where I put in the export file path, the location to the file, whether it's a service-based TM or not, the source language, the target language, and what they are. And there's a number of other things you can do as well. If I was to do that again, but this time add minus, and if we take full as the extension on the end, then now I'll get a list of every single thing that I can possibly do with that. And if I go back up again, you can see how much information is there. So full, it gives me the name, a full synopsis, all the syntax that's available to me, a description of what it does, the different parameters that I can set, what I can do with the server-based TM, what I can do with the source languages, target languages, the TM path, and any common parameters. Plus it also gives me the examples when I take the full. So it's pretty useful, and some functions have more help than others. This is a fairly basic one, so it's quite straightforward. So that's how that first one works. But I can close that window. And let's go and take a look at the next one. So we can create a new TM. So I created a quick script to create a brand new SDLTM. So to do it, I've got a little folder here called TM in here, which is the folder that I set the script to put the TM into so I could find it easily. So if I just run the script, Control-Shift-R, I double click that, create new TM. it should bring the script. Oh. Sorry, I'm not using a proper mouse, I'm using the keyboard and it's not behaving well. So script runs, it says let's start by creating a new empty TM, so enter the source language code, and if, for example, then it tells me how the code should be written. So if I wanted to do one, say for example from French to German, I can type FR for French, and then to German, DE. I can then give it a name, so enter the name for the TM, and let's call it my TM. It then goes through and creates that TM for me. It shows me all the different properties that have been set with that TM, and I just did a very basic one, so I didn't try to change anything else. I don't think I can affect all of these. We might be able to do something with that later if somebody felt it was necessary. We could possibly extend that by using more of the API and extending the toolkit, but these are the features that we provided to date. But if I close that, and if you watch this window at the top here, as soon as I close that, you can now see that there's an SDLTM. It is working. I'm not going to open it in Trello Studio. Well, maybe I will. Let me just get 24 running, so if we want to check anything to test it, we can do. So while that's running, we can do something else. So there's my SDLTM. If I want to upgrade a TMX, I put a couple of TMXs here. Now I tested it with a really big one with, I don't know, well, I'll say really big, it was about 600,000 TUs in there. Hebrew to English, I think, I can't remember. And that worked too, but it takes too long for this demo, so I've got a shortened version of the same one, which is this one here. So I'm just going to copy that path, so I can press F1 in here. It's a shortcut in Total Commander to copy that path. And if I go and open up my scripts again and I say upgrade TMX, okay, so the script demonstrates how it can be used to create a TM from a TMX. So enter the full path to the TMX file. That's what it's doing. Sorry, Studio's just opening in the background. So enter the full path to the TMX file. So I Control V. There's the path to the TMX file. It reads the source languages, which are English US to Hebrew Israel. It tells me how many TUs are there and what it's renamed it to. And if I just press exit, close that script, and if we go back to our folders again, let's come back to here, you can see now I've got a TM in there, which is ENUS to Hebrew, so it's read the language from the TMX, and it's given it the same name as the TMX file, but prefixed it with the language codes, which is what I told the script to make it do. Because I like working with language codes, because then when I look at a TM, I automatically know what it's for. So that was quite straightforward. You can see it's a bit bigger than the other one, so it's definitely got something in there. If I wanted to check it, let's just go and open that. So I'll go to Trello Studio, and if I open, in fact we're in the right folder already, PowerShell News Resources, and in fact no, hang on, that's not the right one. Let me just go to here. That's the right one. You can see it's opened it up, English to Hebrew. So that's worked perfectly fine. Which does the job. So that one's good. And it was quick, and I didn't even have to have Studio running in order to do it. I've only opened Studio to show you some of these things. I don't actually need to use Studio at all for these things. So the next one in my list is to create a file-based project. Before I do that, I'll just do the export TMX thing, as it's in the same folder, so we can see how that one works. So I did that one there. So we will export that one to a TMX, so the same one we had before. You'd expect it to be the same size as this one here, but it won't be, and there's a reason for that, which I'll just explain in a second. So if I open that up and I say export TMX, it's going to ask me the path for the SDLTM, and this time, rather than put the path in, I've used the window in here. The main reason I've used the window for that is because I've let ChatGPT do this for me, and then I didn't bother trying to make any consistency. I thought it was useful to see how both approaches worked. And I think I did that because I started using Windows when I did the script before this, and then I liked the idea and I never went back and changed the other one. So that's why it does that. So anyway, if I just put that path in there now, it's going to export it to a file which has got the same name as the one that I was originally in SDLTM, so you can see the full name is here, and over on the other side, look, and you can see the path where it's gone to. It's gone to the TM in here folder. It's processed 36 and exported 36, so it's exactly the same as what we did before when we created it. If I close that, there's my TMX, this one here, but I'm just going to open that one and this one and just compare these two files for a second. So I'm going to compare them just to show you the difference. So when I look at the two compared, this is the one I just exported, and in here you can see that this has, apart from a couple of the simple changes here and there, it's added an extra line in here which is actually this approved sign-off. And I think, but I haven't investigated this too hard, but I think it's because Studio is assuming, or the script is assuming, because I haven't checked to see if Studio does the same thing, that when you export a TMX from a Trotter Studio translation memory, you can assume these are approved. This is not a rough translation memory. This is one that's been QA'd and is checked and is everything really good. So the TMX that's created comes out with this extra property on here, which I found quite interesting when I looked at it, because I was just curious why it was a different size. But otherwise it's exactly the same. So it just adds this other attribute in here. I don't know whether I can change that or not. Maybe that's something I'll look at in a future date. Bit outside the scope of this one, but that's how I did that. Okay, so now we're going to go to this create a file-based project. And here I wanted to do something a little bit interesting, because the demo file that comes with the sample scripts will also create a file-based project. But the file-based project that it runs through there, it's sort of a demo script that does everything, and it's all hard-coded into the script, and you have to edit the script. So I wanted to do something a little different. So I might just go to these two folders here. So I've got my studio projects on the right hand side. These are my studio projects, there's just nothing in there at the moment. And on this side I've got a folder also in the Studio 2024 folder, but I've called it the packages folder. And my idea here was to create a project by using a project template from Trotter Studio, and once a project is created, pre-translate it from the translation memories, etc., etc., and then create project packages and put the project packages plus a new file, a text file that contains the analysis in the tab separated value format, into the same folder, so that as a localization engineer I would then already have the packages available and the analysis that I could send out to translator for them to do the work. I know it's possible you can do all this manually in Studio if you want to, but it does take longer. And it is a bit more finicky to work with. Like this is quite good, and it separates all the files into a separate folder where it's nice and easy to work. And you'll see when we look at the project that's created, the packages and everything else are also created in there in the normal way, so you also have them stored over there. So this is just making it easier for the localization engineer to work by being able to have all the packages and all the work that they send out in one place, and also named in a sensible way that makes it easy for the engineer to be able to work. So with that, let's just take a quick look at what I have in Studio first. So if I go back over to Studio for a second, and in here I'm going to go to my file, set up project templates, and you'll see it in my project templates I've created a template here called PowerShell Figasser, which is essentially a project template for French, Italian, German, Spanish and Romanian. There's a translation memory on each one that's partially populated, so I should get some sensible analysis results as well, and we can see how that works. So I'm going to use that to create the project. I'll leave Studio open again because it's just going to be easier for me after we've created everything, but keep in mind I do not need Studio open to do any of what I'm about to show you. So if I go back to, go back to Total Commander. There, so we can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to press Ctrl-Shift-R, create file-based project script. So it runs through the initialization, and then it asks me, after it tells me what it's going to do, to enter the project name. So I'm going to call it PS_001. That's what I'll call the project. I can give it a due date, and I ask the script to do this. I don't have to use due dates if I don't want to, but I thought it would be just interesting to show you what's possible. So 2024 12 31, it's getting to the end of the year to finish it. And then opens up a window and asks me to choose the template. So it opens up the Studio 2024 project template folder, and I can pick the template I want. So I'm going to use this one, which I created specially for this task. So you can have as many templates as you like, and it will use those templates in order to create the projects. The source files, I forgot to tell you about the source files, but I'll come back to that. The source files are already there because I put those in a folder where I would drop all the source files. I should have shown you that first, but I'll show you where it's picked up from. But you can see it's going through now. It's finished the scans, it's converted to translatable format, copied to target languages, applied perfect match, pre-translated the files, do the analysis, and now it's creating the packages. It's also created the TSV files, and now it's creating all the different packages. So if I was to click here for a second, you'll see that the TSV files are there, the first package is there. If I just go back to my, because I forgot to show you this bit, I should have shown you that before, that was silly of me. If I come back to here, to my PowerShell, Studio PowerShell Toolkit, the project source files, in the script, I told it to look in this folder for the source files. So the idea would be is that whenever I get a new project comes along, I just dump all the files and folders in here. It can be nested folders, it does not matter. But I drop them all into here, and then the script will then run, pick the files up here from automatically, use the template that I want, and just create the project. So it's pretty intuitive and quite cool, I think. I quite liked it anyway. Anyway, that's finished, and if I just go back to my script a second, let's just open it up so we can see what it's done. So it ran through and it did all the tasks. You can see they were nicely in color. So I was wrong, actually. We do get a little bit of color. Possibly this is black and white because I didn't use any colors in the script. That's probably the real reason. So I was incorrect in what I said earlier. A new project creation has been completed using the template. It then creates these tab separated value files and it puts them in that location and names them with the target language that is being used and the project name. So it's nice and simple and clear and easy for me as a localization engineer to be able to identify where everything is. And what it's then done, it's created the packages for each language pair, and when that's finished it says it's all done and I should be ready to go. So if I close that, in here we can see I've got my packages, I've got my TSV files, and over here I've got my project, which looks like that. And you can see inside the packages folder, all my the packages are in there as well, but they're named different. This is how Studio would have named them, with my package and some numbers. Actually, maybe Studio might not. I should test that actually. It could be that PowerShell has actually created it in this way and called it my package. It might not be like that. It could be that it does actually have the project name. But anyway, the packages that I've created are exactly as I wanted them to be named, with the language code, none of these times and everything else. All I wanted was the project name and the language code, because then I know who gets each one. And also in the reports are all there, XML reports. In my packages, we'll open a package and have a look. So if I open up the German package, F1, this is the other cool thing. I can actually open a package I created here. Normally you can't, but because I created it with PowerShell, I can. So I can go to open the package. You can't open your own packages, that's what I mean. If I take the German one, the only thing I do have to do is when it brings up the prompt to open it, I need to make sure that I give it a different name. So I'll put it in here, but I'm going to call it, I'm surprised the name didn't pop up actually, but anyway, I'm going to call it PS001 underscore package, just to make sure it goes to a different folder, otherwise I'll just have an error. So there it is. I open it up, and if I open both those, you can see that it's been translated already. And if I open it for translation, you should be able to see that they've all been pre-translated, and this is what the translator would receive in their package. So that worked nicely as well. That's all worked as expected, like that. And if I look at my reports, you'll see that there are no reports available. There's only one language here and there's no reports for it. So I'm just going to close this for a second. So creating the TSV files is useful, because then I can send the package and the TSV file, and then the translator can see exactly what analysis is being based on when they receive it and how I'm going to pay them. I could have put anything I wanted in the TSV files, because I used PowerShell to create them by just passing the XML file. If I just show you what that looks like, Sorry, it's opened up down here. Looks like that. So it's a simple thing. It just tells me when it was run, the project name, the project due date, the language, the translation memory that was used, the file names, and then the analysis for each file name. I guess I could have spent a bit more time on that and made it look even neater, and I could have put a summary of the totals, but I wanted to give you the idea of what that looks like. I suppose I should really go through and tidy it up and put some headers at the top, so I only have the project name once, the language once, the due date once, the TM name once, the file name once, and then summary of it all at the bottom. So I guess I could do that with a little bit of effort, but that's what I did so far, and that same approach occurs for every file. So if I look at the other ones, for example, Spanish, is it not opening up? Spanish one, you can see this one's there, and if I just flip between them a second, you can see the analysis is different. So it has provided the correct analysis if I was to check it against each file. And that's essentially it. So there's just 4 examples or 5 examples of what I use the PowerShell toolkit for, to create some additional samples that you can have a play with. Just basically having a think about the sort of things that I might want to do if I was working as a localization engineer or a project manager. So if you do create things or you've got questions and things like that, I'll be very interested to hear them in the comments, so let me know.